Scholar Connections, Making Research Personal, Psych 340 by Melody Anderson. Science of Learning. Operant learning is an organisms learn to associate behavior in a sequence. Model notes Operant Conditioning 2023. Either reinforcement or punishment. The behaviors that we do have to be followed by a reinforcement or a punishment. 4 quadrants of operant conditioning. So operant conditioning has 4 different behaviors associated. So one of them is positive reinforcement, which is adding good stuff to increase a behavior. So the image shows more loose leash walking, give treats, keep walking forward when leash is loose. So as the positive reinforcement when he's walking, basically he's training the dog on the leash, which I am assuming. Negative punishment, delaying good stuff to decrease a behavior. So no more pulling, stop walking, and no treats until leash is loose. So basically, if the dog is pulling, is trying to run off, not walking smoothly, not just being calm, not pulling the owner. The owner stops, doesn't give treats, doesn't do anything. Positive punishment is adding bad stuff to decrease a behavior. No more pulling. Give leash, create a correction and scolding when he pulls. So that's positive punishment. Negative reinforcement is delaying bad stuff to increase a behavior. More loose leash walking, delay leash, pop or scolding until he pulls again. I better watch out. So these are the four different operant conditioning when it comes to positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, and negative reinforcement. Article and author. So this is the article that I researched and that I applied to my career. And I'm going to school to be a licensed counselor. So I did my research on continuing learning for a counselor when it comes to behavioral therapy or cognitive behavior therapy. So the article that I found was The Evolution of Behavior Therapy and Cognitive Behavior Therapy. It was written in January of 2015. The article was written is a part of the journal Behavior Research and Therapy. It was written by Stanley Jack Rackman. He was born in January 19th of 1934. He passed on September 2nd of 2021. He primarily worked with anxiety disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. So this is some part of the article. This is not all of the breakdown of the article, but this is just a little bit of insight. The article breaks down the historical background of the development of behavioral therapy, goes into detail about the evolution of behavioral therapy. The author explains the study of Povolt, who discovered the classical conditioning, also talked about Watson and Raynard's experiment with little Albert. That condition could be used to create a phobia. The author explains how behavior therapy had some success in anxiety. He described one of these issues such as somatic desensitization, which is a therapy that is for fear and some anxiety that happens, that has the patient has to be deeply relaxed and have them visualize fearsome scenes that they need to confront so that the fear can be tolerated because they can learn relaxation and fear. So in the article, he does go into detail with other different behavioral therapy So if you read the article, there's more. I didn't want to go too in depth with every single one, but there is more that he goes into about how behavioral therapy can help with anxiety. The author also discusses reinforcement, the merge of cognitive therapy, and the problems that can be incurred by behavioral therapy. So the article highlights Stanley has highlighted multiple different topics in this article. One of them is the behavioralism applied to clinical problems in the 50s, cognitive analyst and Lance behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy most successful in treating anxiety disorder, cognitive behavioral therapy most widely used in psychotherapy, and strength and weaknesses is cognitive behavioral therapy and under continuous scrutiny. This chart shows what exactly cognitive behavioral therapy, how it affects. So it goes into feelings create behavior, behavior creates thoughts, thoughts create feelings. I am going to read this, but if you guys can take a moment and read it out loud yourself, you want to think about this paragraph and how does it apply this to your life and or your career. I thought this paragraph in the article was very, very interesting. The next slide is going to tell you why I thought that. So negative conjunctions can decline after directly cognitive treatment or after indirect treatment such as exposure. One possibility is that with each exposure, the patient acquires fresh disconfirmation evidence. No heart attack, did not lose control. The accumulation of this personal direct disconfirmation evidence weakens the astro conjunction. However, it is puzzling that the direct modification of the negative conjunction is not consistently more effective than the indirect effects of exposure. The Secretary of Cognitive Behavior Therapy, overexposure has been demonstrated in various projects. Clark, Ehrlich, Hartman, McManus, 2006, and these are important. The remaining question is, why do cognitive improvements take place after treatments that do not exploratory tackle the negative conjunctions? One obstacle to answering questions of this type is the timing of the critical events. I wanted to insert that paragraph because after reading it, I started to wonder, it was just a light bulb that went off, right? So as we know, operating conditioning or even classical conditioning, well, classical conditioning, a little iffy, but observational learning, mostly operating learning, we want to reinforce a punishment, negatively positive reinforcement, in the right timing. So when you look at the image in 3, he didn't wait until he got home to tell the dog or hit the dog or give any negative reinforcement after the fact. Like, he didn't walk all the way home. Just imagine walking your dog, going all the way home, taking the leash off, hitting your dog, bad dog, because you didn't walk correctly. You see what I'm saying? Like that's how is a dog to associate what you're talking about. So when I was reading this, because the whole paragraph is about negative conjunctive. So looking at my own life, dealing with all the trauma that I dealt with and mentally and emotionally abused, and dealing with that for 10 or 11 years, then going into counseling, I had to literally break all of that up to basically retrain my mind, and basically in a classical conditioning form to uncondition what I've learned, to not keep doing the same thing, or reversing my mind back to that place of trauma. And even using operating condition into that, because I have to give myself positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement when getting into the moments, but also retraining my brain from the classical conditioning that I'm so used to. So it's like, yeah, there's a good time to do punishment reinforcement, but if, just like the dog, the dog went all the way home, now it's like, oh, I don't know why you're hitting me, but now I have to sit here and retrain my mind of why you're hitting me. You know what I'm saying? So having trauma in my life, going to counseling and reconditioning my whole entire mind from years of trauma, that takes a lot of work. So I can understand why that could be a negative behavioral therapy can be in a negative view, because it's like, you have all this time, you never really had a perfect or right time to reinforce yourself. So now I'm going in therapy, relearning all of this. I didn't have that right time. I didn't have that correct moment of reinforcement. So now I'm unconditioning my mind. So it was just, my mind kind of went wandering in this moment. So this article particularly meaningful and relates to me, because as me going into counseling and then reading this article, the article shows you the evolution of behavioral therapy. And this relates in life, and this also relates to my field in psychology when it comes to counseling, because this was done in the 1900s, 1800s, and now we're in 2023, and we're still using a lot of classical conditioning, observational learning, and classical conditioning in the field of counseling and mental health and depression and anxiety. Now it's just adding on to that, developing new technology or developing new theories and developing new medication, developing new skills or steps or whatever to help in this field today. So to me, it was just the evolution of how learning is continuing until now. So for me in my career, it's just taking all of the things I've learned now and keep adding to it, because I don't know what was learned in last year, the year before that. And then I don't know what's going to be taught 2 years, 5 years from now. So just continuing the evolution of learning and taking classes or observing learning and looking at other psychologists and looking at other counselors. So it's just, giving an open mind how learning can continue and how it continue all the way in the 1800s. So that's how that relates to me. And it just gives me an open mind to keep realizing like there's still so much to learn, and then continue to learn, because I have to learn on the job. I have to learn, I have to retake for my license. I have to continue education. So it's okay to keep learning, because that helps evolve the things from now until the future, and learning what these other scientists and psychologists has learned that is still brought in today's world. Thank you. The reference page.